Hello everybody and welcome to the Thursday edition of Video Clips, and today we're going to talk about kids and specifically childhood obesity. I have a new study I want to discuss that is just, it made me so sad when I read this. Conversations about childhood obesity usually include a discussion of how these kids are going to track into adulthood and they're going to get degenerative diseases at earlier ages and shorter lifespans as a result. In fact, a Surgeon General said a few years ago that the current generation of kids may be the first that doesn't outlive its parents, and that really is sad when you think about it. But a new study shows that the problems that kids have as a result of being obese, they're not out in the distance like when the kids turn 21 or 22 and enter adulthood. They actually start immediately and they're frightening. And they're also not limited just to physical disease. For kids who are overweight, the risks are 1.3 times higher that they're going to experience things like, and I have to read this list, I can't even remember it, it's so long. Poor health, more disability, having to repeat a grade in school, missed school days, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, depression, learning disabilities, developmental delays, bone, joint, and muscle problems, asthma, allergies, headaches, and ear infections. That's a pretty long list. And a lot of kids, and I know this from experience, suffer from many things on this list, which may explain why a study just a few years ago showed that children who are obese rate their quality of life as less desirable than pediatric cancer patients. That's how miserable obese children are. So I think we all agree it's a problem, but the bigger problem is that we're really not doing much to do anything about it. There's no shortage of ideas, but few have any chance of making a difference. I mean, Mayor Bloomberg's ridiculous idea about restricting the size of soft drinks is not going to change childhood obesity. And many of the ideas that are being bandied about just avoid a discussion of the obvious, which is we have to change the entire dietary pattern that kids are eating in order for this to change. Kids can't exercise away their excess weight. I mean, you can just take out a calculator and figure out, based on some looking on the internet at fast food meals and that sort of thing, that some of these kids would have to be on a treadmill 6 hours a day to exercise the high-fat meals. And of course, I encourage exercise. My gosh, I own a yoga studio and a gym, but it isn't the answer entirely to this problem. Education programs for kids are needed and they're helpful, particularly programs that aren't sponsored by industry, but we can't put 35-year-old heads on 7-year-old shoulders. Asking kids to make good choices when bad ones are available in the school lunch line or the pantry at home is an exercise in futility. I'm 57 years old and it's hard for me to make good choices when the bad stuff is around in my own pantry. So going back to educational programs, we could do educational programs for kids about why it's a good idea to go to bed early, but translating that into 7-year-olds turning off a television set and going to bed on time on their own is ridiculous. That's why they have parents. And parents need to stop being good friends to their kids and start exercising some authority in order to provide a disciplined and safe environment in which kids can grow and mature. This includes determining what kids will and will not eat. Last but not least, we have to stop being so shy about having meaningful conversation with kids about their weight and health, and then follow these types of discussions with action. When kids have life-threatening diseases like cancer, nobody questions the need for intervention. And the consequences of obesity highlighted in this study indicate a very acute need for intervention, the same type of response. And I think that protecting our children and ensuring their current and future health and quality of life is worth the discomfort of addressing this problem. Now, while I'm on the topic of children and obesity and food and the whole 9 yards, according to an article in the New York Times, students in Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, and Parsippany, New Jersey were complaining last year because their school lunches are healthier. And the changes in the school lunch offerings were in response to the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010, which requires that lunches now include fruit and vegetables in order for the schools to get more financial support. Additionally, 2% chocolate milk has been replaced by skim milk. Not a great idea, but at least somebody is acknowledging that our kids are developing weight problems and more health problems as a result of consuming high-calorie beverages. So in response to this, the kids have organized lunch strikes and refused to eat at school. They're also screaming because the prices are higher. It used to be $2.50 for lunch, and now it's $2.60. I mean, are you kidding me? A 10-cent increase is generating all of this. Well, I'm not surprised that kids are demonstrating and refusing to eat and acting out over a 10-cent increase in lunch. Americans, we have all collectively reared a generation of kids who think they're entitled to anything they want, anytime they want it, and they don't take kindly to restriction of any type. Now, there are exceptions, but I have to say, in general, kids are pretty spoiled these days, and their parents and teachers and others in authority are used to supporting their spoiled status, which may explain the adult reactions to what I've just described to you. 1,200 people in New Jersey joined a Facebook group encouraging high school students to boycott lunch. And a teacher in one of the affected schools said, and this is a quote, "There's a reduction in nacho chips, there's a reduction in garlic bread, but there's actually an increase in fruit and vegetables. That's a tough sell for kids, and I'd be grumbling too if I was 17 years old." Now, this to me is pathetic and sad. This teacher could encourage kids to get with the program, eat health-promoting food, explain the benefits such as weight loss, improved school and athletic performance, and getting rid of acne. Instead, he whines and cries and sympathizes with the kids and contributes to the problem. He's not an adult, he's just another kid on the payroll of the local taxpayers. I'm sorry, I know sometimes I get angry about this stuff, but watching it you can get up to here really fast. The improvements that were made, by the way, are hardly a conversion to dietary excellence. Chicken nuggets and pizza are still offered, but the portions are smaller, and that's one of the things the kids are screaming about. High school lunches can't exceed 850 calories. Ridiculous! I can't eat an 850 calorie lunch. Middle school lunches top out at 700, and the grade school lunches can only be 650 calories. Again, I just said in my previous article that I covered that these kids would have to be on a treadmill 6 hours a day if they were going to overcome what they're eating at school. Each student is required to take prepackaged carrots and apples, most of which the petulant kids throw in the trash, according to the New York Times article. One of the reasons is the continued availability of unhealthy foods and the fact that kids can buy these foods a la carte. Now, you might remember a few weeks ago I covered the Japanese school lunch program. What a big difference between the two. School staff, including teachers who don't whine, I hope the teacher who did this is watching, inform kids why they should eat well and the benefits of the foods they're served. There aren't any alternatives, so kids eat the food they're given or they don't eat at all. So as you can imagine, wasting good food, not much of a problem in Japan. Well, unfortunately, the reaction of these kids in these various schools is being used by people who think that people like me are food Nazis to show that forcing kids to eat healthier food at school is a bad idea and it won't work. The article's been forwarded to me several times by people who are trying to show me the error of my thinking. Well, changing school food will work if it's accompanied by a few important strategies such as student education, the elimination of unhealthy foods so there aren't any alternatives, and parents and the educational system getting with the program and supporting the idea. If my kid came home and whined and cried because he was forced to eat apples and carrots, I wouldn't even listen to it. Well, it's unfortunate that the new laws were not accompanied by appropriate strategies for implementation, but even without those, common sense says that kids often do not want to do the things they should. Most of them don't want to go to bed on time, they don't want to turn off the television, they don't want to hang up the phone, they don't want to do their homework, they don't want to do a lot of things. But again, this is why they have adults in their lives. Children don't need tall friends, and they need parents to tell them what to do and when to do it, until they're mature enough to make decisions on their own. So, unfortunately, we have a big health problem with kids in our country. And we have a bigger problem with adults who don't want to acknowledge the severity of the problem and do the right things. And sometimes doing the right things is really hard. It's uncomfortable. But it's far less uncomfortable than suffering the consequences of not doing those things. Well, that's all for this week. As usual, feel free to pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy listening to it. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you next Tuesday.